I realized there are unique, outrageous acts of love that can be committed by me and me alone, and that is the unique purpose, obligation, joy, and responsibility. It's my ability to respond to reality. That's my outrageous act of love.
A planetary awakening in love through a unique self-symphony.
What a privilege it is to be part of this global community.
There's a voice within me that asks, who am I, right? Who am I in all of this?
Each and every one of us has a unique gift to give that we desperately need. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome everyone to the heart of the revolution. And for those of you who are every week, you might wonder, where is our beloved Christina Tahel Emlong, who always welcomes us here every week? So I'm honored to welcome you here today because Christina is feeling sick. So she won't be here with us today. So let's all send her our blessings for her healing. And also today, Dr. Marc Gafni will not be with us because he is traveling today. So today we have a special evolutionary sensemaking by David Cicierci. It is with deep joy that we are together here every week in One Mountain, Many Paths. Our mission here is what Barbara Marx Hubbard and Dr. Marc Gafni together are calling a planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphonies. We are coming here together to activate a new humanity and to awaken a new species, Homo Amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapiens. We are a church, we are a synagogue, we are a mosque, we are a temple, we are a zendo. No one is excluded and everyone is included. We come here together to attune to the evolutionary impulse that is alive and awake in each and every one of us. My name is Krista Josefa, and I'm the co-executive producer together with Christina Emlong, Jamie Long, and Jacqueline Clark. We are delighted to gather here this week for our 321st live community broadcast. What a privilege it is to be this global community where we are together supporting humanity's flourishing. I want to invite everyone here on this call right now to use the Zoom chat box. And if you're listening on Facebook, to use the Facebook comments to say hello, let us know where you are from. And maybe you can also let us know if you are here every week or if this is your first time. And we also use the chat box to what we call resonate the Dharma. So to share what you are hearing. So we all bring our unique voices into the chat box. And that is a beautiful way to participate and not just listen, but really to activate yourself, to let your voice be heard. So if you do that on Zoom, please check that your settings say everyone, because then we can all hear from you. Now, before we start, I want to invite us all to step into this revolution. And one beautiful way that you are able to do that is, of course, by becoming a member. And this is so important because we really are a bottom-up revolution. And it really all depends on us giving ourselves to the fullest. And this entire community, this entire broadcast is completely made possible by all of us, all of the members. So please do sign up to become a member and make your contribution. And you can choose your own contribution. It already starts from $25 a month. So we'll share the links in the chat box. Please go ahead and do that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as a member, you will get access to 9 self-study courses that you can study on your own, but you'll also be invited to our weekly Evolutionary Love code writing groups, and that's a beautiful place to meet with other pioneering souls on the path and to really learn to embody this beautiful Dharma. So here's a little bit of what you can expect today. First of all, like I said before, Dr. Marc Gafni will not be with us today as he has some really important traveling to do. I know that he is sad to miss us today, and of course we are missing him. He will be back with us next week, and then we will continue our journey on the topic of writing a new constitution, which is a new politics of Eros, which is a new politics of outrageous love. So that is definitely an exciting journey, and I hope to all be together again next week. This week, we will have David Cicerci, beautiful name, hard to pronounce, who will be leading the evolutionary sensemaking, and he's going to be talking about how to actually embody this new story of cosmo-erotic humanism in our personal lives and in our communities. So we're in for an exciting journey today. First, I'm going to share the Dharma recap as it was put together by Christina Emelong, and then David Cicerci reads our intention, then Jacqueline Clark will resonate the evolutionary love code, and then we step into our evolutionary sense making with David, and we move into meditation to enter prayer, and at the end I will be back to share a little bit more about how you can participate in co-creation in this revolution, and then we, as always, say our goodbyes by bringing everyone on the screen for a little revolutionary dance party. So I also want to welcome everyone here who is new. We definitely need you here. And if this is your first time, please know that these teachings do stand on their own, but every week also builds on the previous teachings. So I want to encourage you to listen to previous episodes. You can find those on our YouTube channel and also on the website of onemountainmanypaths.org, because you will hear some unique language here. Please don't be overwhelmed if you don't get everything at once. Just trust the magic ways that this language comes to you and comes through your unique understanding. One Mountain, Many Paths is radically committed to telling a new universe story. So now, here is the recap from last week's teaching. And again, this is created by Christina Tehel Emelong. And what she does beautifully every week is she listens to the teaching by Dr. Marc Gafni. She lets it move inside of her, and she takes out the most beautiful, precious quotes from that teaching. She weaves them together uniquely, so it becomes her own unique expression. So Christina Emelong, thank you for doing that. Even though you were sick, you were still committed to doing that, and I am honored to share Christina's recap with you today. Episode 320, How Big is Your Heart? From the agony crucifixion of the cross to the bliss crucifixion of the crossing. In the new world, in order to actually have a new world, in order to actually have a tomorrow, there needs to be a group of us who say, we are going to actually look at the whole thing. We're going to actually understand that we are challenged in a way that we've never been before. That actually existential and catastrophic risk are real. Whether there's ecosystems or governmental systems or nuclear waste systems or dead zones in the ocean systems or runaway artificial intelligence systems, systems begin to collapse. So can we join our hearts? Can we enter the depth of truth and hearts? And just throw away the kind of public ways that we talk? And can we just enter into the truth and the heart of all the time, for real, all the time? We have to actually articulate a new politics of Eros and a new politics of outrageous love. We're here to come together, to actually look each other in each other's eyes. And we say to each other, revolution, revolution. We come together, we face each other, heart to heart and mind to mind, and we say evolution. And we begin to chart the personal, collective and cultural path from a politics of polarization to a politics of meaning. Think about a politics of meaning, which is a politics of Eros and a politics of outrageous love. So in this revolution, in this commitment to the crossing, in this commitment to know that we are literally at a unique moment in history, we are at a moment that we've never been in before. And homo amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapiens, never looks away. So we turn to the cosmocentric force of meaning in the world that is more personal than our most personal relationship. And our role in this wild cosmos is to demonstrate for the cosmos, what does it mean to evolve? What does it mean to transform? What does it mean to birth a new human and a new humanity? We are here to be extraordinary. We're here to be the leaders because this is ours to do. In this generation, we are at the center of what we call a band of outrageous lovers that are here literally to love it all open, to birth Homo sapiens into Homo amor, and to be the beacon to each other and to the galaxy, to this wild cosmos that's all about to start finding each other in a new way. And we've got to forgive ourselves for the crosses of our lives, for the agony, crucifixion, and go from the cross to the crossing, to the bliss crucifixion of reality's eros shimmering alive and awake in us, calling us to play our unique instrument in the unique self-symphony. That's what it means to be alive. So we are going to cross to the other side. We're going all the way in this lifetime. Now, I invite us to more deeply enter into the holy and sacred spaces of one mountain, many paths, and I turn my word to you, David Cicerci.
Krista, I just love the way you say my name, by the way. I think you got it closer and closer each time. Thank you so much, Krista. That was a beautiful recap, and we're missing Christina. And this is the first time I've received, the torch from you, Krista, in this capacity, and the first time that in this capacity, Christina has been out. So I'm really missing her and sending lots of love. And it's also just an honor to be in this position, to be able to step into sense-making with everyone and holding Marc while he's away and holding this container with all of you. So I'm just so grateful to be here. This is it's been exciting in preparation for this day, and I welcome everyone. And I just want to welcome, if anyone is new, put your name in the chat box and let us know where you're from, and just we'll shine some light on you and welcome you. So please, if you're new, just let us know. And also, before I set the intention, I just want to ask everyone, what brought you here, right? What brought us all here? What is each of us trying to get or give or do or be by being here in One Mountain today? The immediate intention of today's broadcast that I'd like to offer is, how do we articulate this new story in our local communities, right? Because we come here every week, and those of you that are new, please let us know and welcome you, and it's great to have you here. And some of you have been here with us for weeks, months, years, even a decade, right? So we come here every week, and we have an intention, right, to learn the new story, to recognize and to live the new story in our lives, and to love each other, right? The community is based on this outrageous love, this evolutionary love. And then we go out to our local communities, right? Our in-person communities, our other virtual communities. And how do we show up in those communities? How do we bring this new story with us? How do we live it, and how do we share it? And just, personally, I'll let you know that I just moved into a new community about a month and a half ago. And my intentional community experience has just been so beautiful. And so I live with 4 other people in the San Francisco Bay Area here in US. And it's an intentional community, right? And so, and actually today, this afternoon, we're going to be sitting down and asking ourselves, what's our vision? What's our values? What's our purpose here, right? And what are our agreements? And so today I want to talk about that, right? Is what are some values, right? We talk here in One Mountain, Many Paths about first values and first principles. Well, how do they show up in communities? So that's my intention for this particular episode, for this particular broadcast. And of course, in general, One Mountain, Many Paths is committed, as Krista beautifully shared, to a planetary awakening in love through unique self symphonies. We also talk about creating a global ethos for a global civilization, or constructing or reconstructing and constructing anew a global shared grammar of value, right? Which is a context for our diversity. So all these major big intentions, purposes, and let's talk about that. How does that show up? So let's back up for just a minute. And what I'd like to do is just ask myself, what is my intention coming here? And we can all ask ourselves, what brought us here, right? And I trace back, when I first met Marc, but if I keep asking myself what the intention came from, I go back further, right? And it's kind of funny, if you do this exercise and ask yourself what the intention is, I don't know when to start. What is it, in high school when I learned how to meditate? Is it, growing up in my family? Is it my parents getting together and meeting? Is it, the founding of my country? Is it Da Vinci in Florence when he transformed with all of his peeps the Renaissance and brought in a new era in humanity? Is it actually when life birthed here on Earth? Was that the intention? Oh, well, actually, we keep going back. Is it when the cosmos was born? Is it the Big Bang? So, really, where do you decide to draw the line? So I'll just draw the line at one place. When I met Marc Gafni back in high school and in college, I grew up as a Catholic, right? And at one point, actually, before I met Marc in high school, I did have this sort of spontaneous experience when I just decided to close my eyes one evening, and 20, 30 minutes later, I felt, oh, that must be the God that I was told about in school. Like I was experiencing myself in a really deep place, right? And so that kicked off this search for what is that? What is that larger force, that being that's feels like it's holding me, that's loving me? What is that love? And how do I get closer to that? So I started, in high school studying different types of religions: Christianity, Judaism, Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism, and Islam, right? And trying to make sense of how do all of these different religions come together? How can they coexist? How does that make any sense, right? And then I continue to ask this question and continue to kind of pursue, if that's the right word, a meditation journey, a journey into realizing God and true self. And I sort of bypassed my own personal self, because that's at the time when I thought what I needed to do. And then I used the internet. I Googled what any self-respecting college student would do, is consult the Google internet for all of our advice. I Googled, how do I put this together? How do things fit? How do I integrate? How do the different religions, how does Qigong and yoga and prayer all fit together, right? And I came to find Ken Wilber. So this is back in 2006, 2007. And so finally I felt like, oh, you mean there's a way to put these all together, make sense of it, in a world when at the time, I myself felt split and fractured, right? I had this split, true self, God, and then this personal self that was sort of a result from the web. And then Google just talked to me right now because it heard me. And then the personal self, which at the time I didn't feel like I was able to bring fully to my life. I was also growing up bisexual, and I was in the closet, right? So there was a split, right? And then I started to see that there's maybe a possible way to weave these things together. But it wasn't until 2009 when I met Marc Gafni in San Francisco at an event called Integral Spiritual Experience. And I remember being in this hall where 500 people who are somehow connected to Ken Wilber and his work came together, and Marc was running this program, and he gave a particular speech on the fall of the temple in Jerusalem. Many of you know that speech, that talk, right? And I remember sitting, actually, I was in the balcony, kind of in the mezzanine section in the back, and he went on for like 2.5 hours and talked about reclaiming Eros and reclaiming all that was exiled from the fall of the temple. And I felt myself just beaming, and my entire being just electrified. I felt this transmission, and it was a transmission that finally I felt like my entire being was honored. It's not just about true self up there getting to this other place, transcending. It's about the entirety of the cosmos living in me and reclaiming that. And I remember after his talk, he walked down off the stage and walked down the aisle, and I was in the back, and he locked eyes with me and he smiled. And what was the first thing he did? He took my name tag and he looked at it. David, nice to meet you. And that has more significance than it sounds, right? Because Marc is a person who knows you individually and loves you individually, right? And loves me individually and sees people as they are. And to know my name and to recognize me for my uniqueness was just the beginning of our journey together. So that was when I met Marc. And then I went off and went into the Peace Corps and went into, I lived in Nigeria for 1.5 years. With this thing in the background, which this evolutionary love that I was trying to make sense of from Marc, I went to a place which was maybe one of the most ecologically devastated places on earth, in Nigeria. And I was there for about 1.5 years, and I got to, the more I was overseas working in this volunteer capacity, the more I started seeing the brokenness of our world. That it wasn't just in me, and it wasn't just a few places, this was something larger, right? For example, I was staying in Nigeria in the last 10% of the remaining rainforest. The rest of it's already been devastated. In a country that was actually experiencing the legacy of colonialism, right? It was kind of arbitrarily carved out to contain about 400 different tribal groups and languages, around significant oil reserves. No wonder there's fighting. No wonder there's corruption, right? I experienced what it's like to live near places where there's militia groups and terrorism and kidnapping, political violence. The life expectancy in Nigeria is 55 years old. 55 years old. It's the largest country in Africa and by far the most wealthy in terms of its wealth, resources. So I was living in this place of outrageous pain, even though at the same time I made some amazing relationships, and there's so many beautiful people there. And where I could find the beauty of the rainforest, I was blown away. And the cultural heritage and the tradition, so beautiful, and yet there was this outrageous pain. And so I felt like something wasn't right. Something was insane about this world. And I'll tell you one example. So one day, one of the participants of this project that I was working on there in Nigeria rushed into the office and said, "David, I need your help." One of my neighbors, he had a tooth infection, and it got infected, and his head is blown up like as big as a balloon, or like a volleyball, and he really needs to go to the hospital. And I need you to help drive me to the hospital. And he showed me a picture of this person, and he literally couldn't eat for days or maybe weeks or maybe longer, because he couldn't open his mouth. And I saw the picture of him. His head was about the size of a basketball, and he was skeleton. And he said, I need you, right? And in that moment, I contracted and I pulled away. This was too much for me. I said, I can't use the truck. I'm not allowed. Or, you know, I came up with some excuse to buffer myself from that outrageous pain. And I said, no. And a few days later, I got word that he died. And that was a hard moment, right? Something that in my country could have been cured on day 2, right? And he could have just gone about his day, right? Just a simple antibiotic, simple dental care. And in this country where you had a small elite that had most of the resources and you had the vast majority of the population with barely anything to survive, and certainly no institutions that provided healthcare well enough, and he suffered the way he did. Now, I'm not bringing this example to say something about Nigeria being a bad country or anything like that. It's an example of the pain that exists in so many places in the world. And I just didn't know how to make sense of it, right? This fracturing, this insanity in the world, right? And Marc helped me understand what was going on. Marc helped me realize that it was actually, it's not about Nigeria. It's about the story of separation, that we're living in a world where we have a crisis of intimacy. He calls it the global intimacy disorder. We don't feel each other. We don't recognize each other. We actually living in a system of separation. The parts are not intimate with each other. And he helped me understand that this actually comes from the evolution of our stories. So the stories are what drive evolution in a certain way, and that there's these 3 great stages of evolution: traditionalism, where, you know, maybe the first several thousand years of humanity, we actually had an emphasis on revealed truth, right? On kind of the dogmas of the great traditions that help to structure society and provide answers for everything. And there was kings and religious leaders, and value was that it was they were living in a field of value. But then what happened was the great devastations in the West, anyway, in Europe, the Black Death, almost half the population devastated, killed by this disease. And the story of traditionalism, which had this particular way of seeing the world, actually broke down, right? There was a plague. It was a crisis. There was a crisis. The story fell apart. And so whenever there's a crisis, we talk about crisis as an evolutionary driver. And so the crisis led to a new story. And the story was the story of modernity, right? This is how separation, the story of the separate self actually came. When Da Vinci and his people and all the people that were the thinkers of the time started to realize that, no, we don't have to rely on some king or some noble or some religious leader to tell us about everything. We have intrinsic value as a separate self. I can think for myself. I can use my rationality. I can use the scientific method. I can, there's actually, everyone has a right to exist and to pursue their own truth and pursue the truth and pursue their own happiness. This is a story of modernity. About 500 years ago, it started, and it continued to grow, and the Industrial Revolution really catapulted it. And with the story of modernity, we had so many dignities. The dignities of modernity. The great things about modernity was that it spread democracy, it spread human rights, it spread, it actually was the largest increase in wealth ever in the history of humanity. More people were lifted out of poverty, right? So a lot of good came, like the empires fell, right? And nation states really started to build themselves. But there's also, with that story, as with any story, there's disasters, there's catastrophes, there's risks. And with that story, you have the great technology revolution that came out of that. is leading to a potential dystopia, an existential threat to humanity. Obviously, climate change is the more obvious one, where we've extracted so many resources and we polluted so much of the air that the Earth itself is losing its life-sustaining capacity. You also have the technology that led to nuclear weapons, nuclear power, nuclear fuel, put us at risk of going to war with each other and having a nuclear holocaust. And that's a very real possibility. We all know that the doomsday clock, as it's called, is like something like what, 30 seconds to midnight? Anyone know the actual number? Meaning we have all these risks in front of us that could lead to this dreaded nuclear war. We also have actually the thing that at least Toby Ord from the Precipice, he wrote the book The Precipice that Marc always references, talks about there's a 1 in 6 chance, in his opinion, that artificial intelligence could basically take over and reduce the value of the human being and actually run away and go kind of haywire and change its own algorithms in a way that actually we can't control it, we can't stop it, and we start to lose our own humanity. Why am I telling you all this? Because I'm setting the context, right? And this is also for me, right? Part of what I'm interested in is how do we tell this story to the people around us in a way that makes sense, right? And so I'm doing this with you, and so you can maybe do this with me at home and see how would you say this? How would we say this? How would we articulate this? Marc does it so beautifully, and yet we need to do it ourselves, right? So that's the story of modernity. Story of post-modernity started to come online when the story of modernity, actually about 50 to 100 years ago, it actually wasn't enough, right? There was a realization that there was something missing in that story. So this postmodern realization was that story is story, right? Everything is a story. So the modern and the traditional periods were stories, that we actually create our stories. That was what postmodernity actually gave us, and that every single human being has their own story and has their own perspective, right? So from the modern period to the postmodern period, we started to have more of an inclusion of everyone's interiority, subjectivity. This is my perspective, right? And the good things about that is that it challenged this modern separate self win-lose success story, right? It blew open the possibility so that more stories could be included, right? The marginalized stories. Every human being has their perspective, yes, right? And so the interiority was valued. And here I'm living in the San Francisco Bay Area, which you could say is sort of the mecca for the postmodern thought, right? It's kind of everyone is invited to do what they want to do and be who they want to be, right? There's this typical phrase that people always say is, you do you, right? You do you, right? And so just, there's new forms of expression, creativity, dance, right? I'm in my own personal sphere here, we have jam sessions and music and a lot of heart-centered sharing, a lot of dinners that we have around the table. We just go around and say, check in, right? How are you feeling? How are you doing? And so we actually get to feel each other. It's such a beautiful, dignity of that approach, is that people feel valued as individuals. There's a downside to this though, right? And the downside is that if everyone has their own perspective and everything is relative to your perspective, my perspective, it's just a different perspective, then there's no coherent perspective that can really bring us together. There's no larger story that we're participating in because it's all made up, right? You make sense of your own story, right? Your hero's journey, if you will. And so while there's also more dignities to this postmodern story, and that's that we have an explosion of access to knowledge and the democratization of knowledge, right? The internet is in a certain way, it's a postmodern invention that enabled everyone to access perspectives, right? You didn't have to go through an authority figure. Now, the downside, of course, is that everyone has their own story and we don't know what's true anymore, right? we actually, we get stuck in, well, if it comes to my feed, it must be true, right? And we actually have no way to discern reality and truth from falsehood, right? Or value from what's made up, right? And a perfect example of what could happen in the situation is what happened with Cambridge Analytica in 2019. A movie came out, or a documentary came out about how they used the algorithms of social media to manipulate entire swaths of population and change the votes in favor of whoever's paying the bill. What happened to democracy? What happened to democracy when we actually, the one who has the highest bid actually can manipulate the largest number of people? Because, again, it's all relative. No one really knows who's the authority, so we're just looking at the almighty dollar as the reference point here. Now, at best, in this postmodern worldview, we can share an experience, right? It's beautiful in that sense. But at worst, we have polarization, right? How many bills did Joe Biden pass in the last couple of years? How successful is he really able to be? You have this polarization, right? And in America, at least, it's probably the most polarized we've ever had it. Propaganda, not only in Russia and Putin's Russia, where they control everything that you see communication-wise, but also in the United States, right? With a certain former president, and every president tries to some degree, but certain presidents sort of make up stories and deny any actual truth. Third, there's meaninglessness. 800,000 people die of take their own life every year, right? Why? Meaninglessness, right? Feeling alone, feeling like I'm a nobody, there's no purpose, right? If it's just all subjective, then what's there to adhere to? What larger story is there to align to? Fourth, global inequality. There's a failure to coordinate resources, right? We have 7+ billion people on the planet. 12,000 children die every day of hunger, and yet 39% of the world's population is obese. We have an issue with our ability to coordinate resources to get to the people that need them, right? This is all part of this story that's been broken down, that's the postmodern story. We don't actually have a larger story to hold together anything. So you have, the UN and other international bodies that are trying to hold something together, but because they can't declare or claim any sort of larger principle to adhere to in a way that holds people and states accountable, and people aren't actually holding themselves accountable, then it just falls into power dynamics. So if Russia pulls out or vetoes this or that, it just doesn't happen, right? Or if the US does, for that matter. So, and to the extent that there are good things happening, which there are so many, right? I don't want to forget that. It's a breakdown of narrative, a breakdown of story, and all these existential risks are true and are real. And yet, so many good things are happening all over the world. Yet it's not enough. It's not enough to just have the next initiative, the next nonprofit organization to send a few more dollars here, a few more dollars there. It's not enough to change the course of civilization fast enough to avert disaster, right? So if the story of separation, this global intimacy disorder, is tearing us apart, it is only a new story based on intrinsic value, meaning that value is real, and intrinsic first values and first principles that can actually create and transform individuals and communities to get through this and find a larger whole. All this was to just say hello, and it's already 39 minutes after, so I don't know what just happened with the time. But this was the context, right? This is why we need a new story. And I started with my own personal story, because we all have our personal stories. And as Marc often says, your personal story is chapter and verse in the universe, a love story. right? So there's actually no split. And what I'd like to do right now is with this context, and this is the context that we can share with people, some context version of this. What is the new story, right? This is only the why. Why do we need a new story? So what is the new story? And I want to turn it to Ms. Jacqueline Clark to share the code for this week, which is actually 3 codes put into one, but it's a really great introduction to these first principles and first values that are the guiding compass for this new story. Jacqueline, take it away, sister.
Thank you, David. That was such a full and rich intention setting and a beautiful sharing of your own journey and your own traveling to the place that you are now. So thank you so much for that. And it's my great honor, privilege, and delight to resonate the code today. So this week's evolutionary love code. The universe is not a fact. It is a story, not an ordinary story, a love story, not an ordinary love story, but an evolutionary love story. And your love story is a chapter in the evolutionary love story. Reality is always asking you a question. Are you ready to play a larger game? Are you ready to participate in the evolution of love? The field of intimacy and desire is seamless, but not featureless. We are each unique features of the larger field of intimacy and desire. That means that we are each a unique configuration of intimacy and desire that is part of this larger field. The field is always moving toward greater intimacy. The field itself is generating a new structure of intimacy, which is the unique self-symphony. To join the field and play your instrument in the unique self-symphony, you must be willing to take your unique risk. And I just resonate it one more time. The universe is not a fact, it's a story. Not an ordinary story, a love story. Not an ordinary love story, but an evolutionary love story. And your love story is a chapter in the evolutionary love story. Reality is always asking you a question. Are you ready to play a larger game? Are you ready to participate in the evolution of love? The field of intimacy and desire is seamless, but not featureless. We are each unique features of the larger field of intimacy and desire. That means we are each a unique configuration of intimacy and desire that is part of this larger field. The field is always moving toward greater intimacy. The field itself is generating a new structure of intimacy, which is the unique self-symphony. To join the field and play your instrument in the unique self-symphony, you must be willing to take your unique risk. And with that, I hand back to you, David.
Thank you, Lady J. Isn't it just the way that she resonates? It's just like I'm like carried in the river of love here. That was so beautiful. So you see, if you could, we could pick apart each piece of that code and double click on it and make sense of it, right? But I'm only going to throw out a few things here because we only have some minutes left. But before I do, I'll just remind us that these are intrinsic values of the cosmos, right? And so the question could be like, why not? I'm gonna name a few values, right? First values that come out of that code, which I propose should form the basis of any community that we're living in or working with, right? But before I do that, it's like, well, why don't we just have rules like, bedtime is at 10 o'clock. You have to, clean up after yourself, or just like general rules like love and respect and care. Those are all important. Those are all good. But by aligning ourselves with deep intrinsic first values and first principles, we're actually aligning ourselves with the force of the cosmos. Like, we're actually aligning ourselves with the power that created the Big Bang. So it's not surface level, it's deep. And when the bedtime hours issue becomes a problem, then what do? Well, we actually go deeper. And so, because remember, one of the criteria for something to be a first value and first principle is that it has to have been present all the way back since the Big Bang, right? And it just continues to evolve and come into different formations as evolution happens. And before I also state some of these values, my assertion is that the only way that we can create a planetary awakening in love through unique self symphonies, or a global ethos for a global civilization, or a universal grammar of value that is a context for our diversity, is if we go back and live them out in our local communities. So that's, the old term of think global, act local. Well, we can think global, act global, and think local and act local too. So anyway, we need communities based on these values. So I'll just name a few. The first one, evolutionary love. What is evolutionary love, and why evolutionary love? Why not just love? Well, as Marc says often, love has been hijacked by a particular form of love. When we think of love, either we think it's an emotion that comes and goes, and when it goes, we're kind of like, I don't love that person anymore. Or we think it's a human emotion that it's only experienced at the human level, and so we can kind of make it up, or depends on who you're with, right? Or it's something romantic, or it's even related just to sexuality. So I can only say I love you if ultimately I want to marry you, right? And these are what Marc calls the exiles of love. So what we're talking about is actually something much bigger than that. And evolutionary love, or what we call sometimes outrageous love, is actually the love, the force, the power that drives all of evolution. And so when we're in local communities, when we say, and actually I remember about 6 months ago, I actually proposed something like, hey, everyone in my previous community, we should, as long as we're loving each other, ... I don't remember what it was about. And then someone messaged me back and said, love, everyone says love. What does it even mean anyways, right? He was articulating what people often feel is that love is just, it's made up, or it's, your love is different from my love, right? And so when we can actually realize that there is this force that is in us, as us, and through us, moving through us, and is holding us, and that's been the same force that created the Big Bang, and that transformed Europe from the Middle Ages dark period to a flowering and flourishing of creativity and the Renaissance, right? That same love we can align with, and we get much more power that way, and we can actually affect something larger. And I was going to share a little story, but well, I'll just go on to the next little value, the next first value, first principle. And well, actually, one more thing about that, an example would be, for example, there's sometimes what happens in community, or maybe every time what happens in community, there's this initial burst of love, right? This feeling of love, that everyone loves being with each other and can't get away, wants to share meals, share everything, share their lives. And then at some point, someone gets upset, or someone pulls away, and then, oh no, it's uncomfortable now, and we pull away, right? And actually, there's a feeling of pulling away. Well, without, a typical response might be, oh well, we're done. We actually don't love each other anymore, and it's over, so we should go our separate ways. But when we realize that what Marc often talks about is that there's actually the 3 stations of love, right? There's the submission, separation, and sweetness stations. meaning we can actually, when we are in love in the feeling sense, like, you know, in kind of this ecstatic initial state, that's just the first station of love. And we know we're going to hit a place where we actually have to find ourselves again. We have to recreate our boundaries and go back inside and find what we need and want and desire. And that's the separation station. But if we know that we're aligning with the larger force that always works in these three stations, then we know that if we stick with it and use our discernment, we can get to the next station, which is sweetness, where we're able to hold our individuality and our communion with the others, right? So in community, this is like maybe the fundamental issue that always comes up, is how much do I stay with you and sacrifice my own personal time and life and space, and how much do I pull away and find my own space, right? So that healthy integration is actually part of the nature of reality if we're aligned with it and attuned to it. The second first value and first principle, maybe it's first, and they're in no particular order, cosmocentric intimacy. A community based on cosmocentric intimacy. What does that mean? Well, remember that intimacy, well, if you don't remember, but the intimacy formula that Marc has created, we can go through it together, right? Intimacy equals shared identity in the context of relative otherness, meaning we share value, we share something in common, there's enough in common, whatever it might be. In the context of relative otherness, right, you actually do have to have otherness. You can't just be, I'm thinking of in that movie 1984, that first scene where everyone is watching that movie, the video of some propaganda, and they're all cheering and they're all wearing their same uniforms and just doing this sort of, you know, standing up and getting excited about some propaganda, right? They don't have otherness. They actually wiped out otherness. So maybe that's an example of like the Soviet regime that potentially kind of did it that way. But you need otherness, right? So shared identity in the context of relative otherness times mutuality of purpose. You actually do need a purpose. You can't just get together and hang out. I remember about 3-4 years ago, I created a outrageous lovers meetup group. Yeah, does anyone remember meetup.com, where you can find people and you know, meet around a common interest? And I asserted that our purpose was to fall in love with each other. And we would get together and I would just sort of, the intention was to fall in love with each other. And Marc, I think, astutely recognized that that's not going to last. You actually do need to find a way to vision a purpose together, right? And so indeed it didn't last, because, you know, falling in love, oh, that's fun, and then what, right? And so yeah, you need mutuality of purpose times mutuality of recognition. Oh, thanks for whoever put it in the chat box. Yeah, Krista. Mutuality of recognition. We recognize each other. We actually notice each other, that we're not just cogs in the machine, right? A lot of corporate bureaucracies are not very intimate because they treat everyone like a number, right? And so we need to recognize each other. Times mutuality of value. I need to value your life. I actually need to care about you. And we have to actually have values in common. Mutuality of pathos. We feel each other. We celebrate when we're in joy, and we hold each other when we're in sorrow and pain. And again, a lot of corporations say, you know, leave your feelings at the door, right? And so there's this quality of, it's not intimate. And then finally, why is it cosmocentric intimacy? Well, if it's just, remember, if cosmocentric intimacy is actually the fourth level of intimacy, you have the first, which is egocentric intimacy. I need that. In a community, I need to know what my life is all about and actually focus on taking care of myself and doing my work and doing whatever I need to do, right? Egocentric intimacy. I need to be intimate with my own parts. I need to do my own work and interior work. I need to go to psychotherapy if I need to. I need to have a job, right? Egocentric intimacy, that's important. Including that, though, we have ethnocentric intimacy, meaning our group or our people or maybe our nation, right? It's like I actually need to have some connection with something larger than myself that is not so far that I don't even know what it is. I have to have some resonance with a group, right? But then we continue to grow. If we just stop there, it breaks down. We actually have a global world. So if we just stop at ethnocentric intimacy, we can collapse on each other, because we actually don't have something larger than us, larger than our group, that can hold us when things get shaky, perhaps. So we move to world-centric intimacy. We include ego, ethno, we have world-centric intimacy. We actually feel and we care about refugees as they escape, Bangladesh, when there's climate refugees from the flooding, right? Or Ukrainian refugees trying to find home and shelter, right? Or people in Nigeria that are in a whole different world context, but I care about them, right? So we actually have we have to have something beyond ourselves. And then cosmocentric intimacy, and this will be the last point I make. Cosmocentric intimacy, it's not just about the world, it's also about, yes, animals, like Marc often refers to pork chops, lamb chops. We actually care that animals are treated properly and are cared for and not shuffled into factory farms. We actually want to create our system and use our money in a way that is promoting a flourishing ecosystem and also the well-being of sentient life. But it's not only that. Cosmocentric intimacy is actually, I'm intimate with the entire spiral of evolution, past, present, and future, interiors and exteriors. So that when we make decisions, we're asking ourselves, what is our responsibility to the past generations that have done the work to get us to where we are? And what is the future calling us toward, right? This is bigger than lamb chops. I mean, that's important too, right? But it's the spiral of evolution. And so with that, I won't continue the rest of the first values, but those are just some examples that, and I don't know if I've succeeded in articulating them in a way that I could just sort of speak it out with my community members or with other people's community members. But maybe the ultimate realization is that we can kind of take pieces and parts and articulate them in our own way that work. But ultimately, if what we're doing at a local level is not connected with something larger, I'm not interested, right? And I think a lot of us aren't very interested. So I realize it's 3 minutes to the top of the hour and we haven't done prayer. And so what I can maybe do is just, are we doing prayer, Krista? We'll do prayer, yes, okay. Because what I think would be a good recap is actually just to say that we need to drop into source with our community, right? We need to move our attention to the ultimate, to something larger, what we can call God or the divine or the field of love, right? And prayer actually gives us that practice to connect with that ultimate. So we turn towards the great mystery, the beloved. We turn towards our own inner deepest nature, which is connected with all that is. And we say, thank you. We say, I love you. We say, I need you. I pray, right? And so what I'd love to have us do, and I think you'll enjoy if we go a few minutes over, because we have a video that's actually a meditation to enter prayer. So Suzette, please take us into that video. And as you're watching the video, and as we're watching the video, let it penetrate you, right? It's sort of like, let's see how it opens us up. And then on the other side, we'll just let the prayers fly into the chat box, and then we'll close with Krista. Take us in, Suzette.
So there's a corner of the world that's unloved, that needs me, that needs you, that needs us. The world is a living system. It's alive, all of it. This world that we are now part of is at the exact phase of its own evolution, where it can either It's like a birth, that this world itself can go into devolution and destruction very easily, but it is calling for the evolution of this world through us. That's how the world is going to evolve. The world is a living system. Like we have eye cells and ear cells and hands. We have trillions of cells creating a physical body. How many cells joining together for doing what they need to do best will it take to form a new world?
Based on the best interior and exterior science we have, who are we? We are unique configurations of intimacy. We're unique expressions of outrageous love. And we're held always by the infinity of intimacy. We can't get away from the vicious fire and warm up with the holy fire. Climate change will never change, right? We cannot fill up our oceans until we fill ourselves up with the water of Eros, right? We cannot create peace on earth until we create peace in ourselves. And then all of us come together, literally as a bottom-up, unique self-symphony, rising up, right? A billion rising. We are partners, and together we stand. United we stand, and apart, right, we fall apart.
I am speaking my voice now as a frequency of evolution entering into the mind sphere, the nervous system of humanity, as one of the millions of impulses toward the planetary awakening. Planetary awakening. Where else would it come from? Wow. And you know, to just allow ourselves for a moment to realize that each of our deepest heart's desire is coded with our genius, and that our genius is an expression of the evolutionary impulse of creation, of the universal love story. Our hearts are opening. And our voices are vibrating with the frequency of the impulse of creation that's coming through each one of us. I am definitely an irreducible expression of the entire impulse of evolution speaking. We're right now. Transform the earth into a field of love. Everybody's voice as an expression of that irreducible impulse of evolution, when it is consciously expressed and placed into the mind sphere or internet sphere that we're now on, codes itself as part of the planetary birth.
We are saying that in this moment, we are evolutionary love. In this moment, we are here to love the moment open all the way to birth the future. All the way.
Let the prayers roll and all the way. We're praying for everything here. So I'm just going to read a few prayers out loud. Jacqueline, I pray to bring my unique gift to my corner of the world that would otherwise be unloved. Yes. Jamie, I pray for cosmo-erotic communities to emerge all around the world. Amen, Jamie. Krista, I pray for every human being to always feel held by the infinity of intimacy. Becca, thank you, David. Krista, yes, I pray to receive the funding to buy a place to build our home of outrageous love in Holland. Yes, may it be so. KZ, praying for evolutionary families, communities, unique self-symphonies, waking up, growing up, cleaning up, showing up, and rising up all over the planet. Amen. Gabi, I pray for healing the disorder of intimacy privately and all over the world. Yes, and there's more and more. One more prayer. Carol, I pray that we all shift our attention to the whole, pulsating tapestry woven by the love that, again, to reference Dante, moves the sun and the stars, which we are all and every one of us essential, beautifully colored thread. Amen. Thank you, and let the prayers lift to the sky as Krista takes us home. Take it away, Krista.
Yes. Wow. Thank you, everyone. And I want to begin by inviting each and every one of us to come on the screen right now and do it a little bit differently this week, because I feel we've been on such an intimate and personal and outrageously loving journey today that I just feel like, oh my God, I just want to feel each other. I want to feel all of you. And David led us so beautifully into the context of all the stories that don't have the capacity to take us all the way home, and showed us the desperate need for a new outrageous love story, and shared these first principles of outrageous love with us. And that's who we are here together. So I'm going to actually put you all on gallery view. So you will be invited to promote as panelists, as it's called, and you can turn on your camera if you want. Please stay muted just for now, so we can, so you can still hear me. So we can see each other's beautiful faces, because we are here as a band of outrageous lovers. And especially this week when Dr. Marc Gafni is not here with us, and we're missing him this week. And of course, we're missing Barbara Marx Hubbard. And those two amazing genius people created this evolutionary space for us to hold. And especially this week, we can feel like, wow, this is really ours to do. And David modeled it so beautifully, that we are a unique self-symphony. And there's always an invitation to step forward, to say, okay, this is mine to do, to take your unique risk. And this week it was David who says, okay, I'm going to actually pour myself into this space and take these years and years and years of studying the Dharma and find my own unique way to share it with other people. And each and every one of us here is welcome to come and play however you want to play. And of course, the biggest way is, please do become a member and resource our home if you haven't done that yet. But there's many more ways that we can play together. One of them is, I see you here, Raquel, you are part of our amazing editing team. So what we're doing is publishing all the evolutionary sense-making episodes. So that is 321 weeks. And we're going to publish those in books, not only for many, many people to read them, but also as kind of a sacred, holy archive for future generations to be able to read and see the holy space that we have had and that we created here together. So we created an editing team, and you're welcome to join that. Elena is leading that together with Christina and myself, and Elena is teaching us exactly how to do that editing. It's a simple process. We can all learn it, and you're invited to join that team. But also we have an amazing social media team. Jacqueline is working every week, pouring in all of her love, and Jamie, of course, creating every week beautiful videos and publishing these videos on YouTube. And then we have Sharmila, who is in the social media team, who is then distributing these beautiful 1-minute clips on Instagram and on Facebook and everywhere. So that's another amazing team that you can play in. But if you have another way, if you feel like, wow, my gifts are really about this, and this is what I want to contribute, please just reach out to me, and I'd love to get to know you and just learn how we can play together, because it's really a pleasure to co-create together and to be able to share our gifts, but also to witness each other in our gifts and to love each other like that. For example, Becca, you always give so generously with your whole heart, your gifts to this revolution, but also with your prayers and your beautiful singing at the end and just your presence. And I see Myra here, who is our lead example of how to bring in new people, because she is just gifting away memberships to all of her friends, because she's like, this is the best place to be. I want you to become a member. So that's another amazing example. And of course, Kirsten is leading the whole great library team, the big editorial director of the great library, all the books that Dr. Marc Gafni and Zachary Stein and many more are publishing. She's leading that. And we have Benjamin here, who edited the entire Cheers book. And I can just go on and on and on. So many people just saying like, wow, this is the revolution. This is what matters. And it truly is a bottom-up revolution. And all of reality is calling us to say, come play with us. So that's the invitation for this week. And let's celebrate, as we do always, with a little dance party. And I know that you can see it, but there's still many more people here who, too bad, they're just shy to turn on their cameras, I guess, but maybe I can seduce you to do so. And let's dance it out. We have a dance party today at How Deep Is Your Love? And we'll see each other on the other side. Thank you so much.